Blood and starlight. The orbital defense station hung like a broken jewel against the backdrop of stars, its once-proud silhouette now marred by flames and debris. Emergency lights flashed desperately through the smoke as evacuation shuttles fled the dying structure. The battle had been swift and devastating, the Krell attack catching the human defenders completely off guard. Sergeant James Harrison ducked as another explosion rocked the corridor, sending a shower of sparks cascading down around him. The acrid smell of burning circuitry filled his lungs despite his helmet's filters. "Command, this is Echo Squad," he shouted into his comm. "We've got civilians trapped in Sector 7. Request immediate extraction support." Only static answered him. The station's communications were either jammed or destroyed. James cursed under his breath. His squad had been separated during the initial assault, leaving him alone to escort the remaining civilians to the evacuation points. But with Krell forces swarming through the station, their chances were dwindling by the second. "Status report," he told the small group of terrified technicians huddled behind him. "Everyone's still with me." A young woman nodded, clutching a data tablet to her chest like a shield. "The nearest escape pods are 2 sections away, but the Krell are between us and—" The words died in her throat as the lights in the corridor flickered, then went completely dark. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "They've cut the main power," James whispered, raising his pulse rifle. "Stay close." Something moved at the far end of the corridor, a shadow detaching itself from the darkness. James's blood ran cold. He'd seen combat footage of Krell warriors, but nothing prepared him for the reality. She moved like liquid death, her midnight blue scales gleaming under the emergency lights. Her elongated skull was crowned with a ridge of bony spines, and her amber eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire. The insignia on her armor marked her as one of the elite, a Huntress. "Run," James told the civilians, raising his rifle. "I'll hold her off." The Krell warrior tilted her head, studying him with predatory interest. In her clawed hands, she carried twin energy blades that hummed with deadly purpose. "Brave," she said, her voice surprisingly melodic despite the harsh translation. "Foolish, but brave." James fired a burst from his rifle, but the Huntress moved with impossible speed, dodging the shots as if they were traveling in slow motion. Before he could fire again, she was on him, one blade at his throat while the other disabled his weapon with surgical precision. "Your kind fights well," she said, her face inches from his visor, "but without purpose, without understanding." James could hear the civilians fleeing behind him. Good, at least his death would buy them time. "We fight to survive," he growled, "against invaders who attacked without provocation." Something flickered in the Huntress's amber eyes, confusion. She pulled back slightly, studying his face through his visor. "Your voice," she whispered, her blade wavering. "I know your voice." James blinked, caught off guard by the change in her demeanor. "What?" A massive explosion shook the station, throwing them both against the wall. The Huntress recovered first, pinning James with inhuman strength. "Who are you?" she demanded, her face illuminated by the fires now spreading through the station. "Sergeant James Harrison, Earth Defense Force," he answered, bewildered by the question. "Serial number EDF 2187. "No," she cut him off, frustration evident in her voice. "I know you. How do I know you?" Before James could respond, the station's AI blared through the emergency speakers. "Critical structural failure imminent. All personnel evacuate immediately. 5 minutes to catastrophic decompression." The Huntress's head snapped up, her predatory instincts assessing the new threat. In that moment of distraction, James drove his knee up, breaking her hold, and scrambled away. Rather than pursue, she stood watching him, her expression unreadable. "This station will fail," she said. "Come with me if you wish to live." James stared at her in disbelief. "You're joking, right? You were just trying to kill me." "I was," she acknowledged, sheathing one of her blades. "But now I must know why you are familiar to me. There is something, a memory I cannot grasp." Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. James had seconds to decide. "The civilians," he said. "I can't leave them." "They are beyond your reach now," she replied without emotion. "Choose quickly, human, life or death." James knew she was right. He couldn't reach the evacuation point in time. With a silent apology to his commanding officers, he nodded. Lead the way." The Huntress moved with astonishing speed through the dying station, James struggling to keep pace. They passed through areas already breached by Krell boarding parties, but none challenged them. One look at the Huntress's insignia was enough to send other warriors scurrying out of their path. "What do I call you?" James asked as they raced along. "I am Navara, first Huntress of the Krell hegemony," she replied without looking back. "Though I suspect you knew that already." "I've never seen you before in my life," James protested. "Then why do I remember your voice?" Navara demanded, coming to an abrupt halt outside a docking bay. "Why does it echo in my mind like a forgotten song?" James shook his head. "I don't know, maybe you've interrogated other human prisoners." Navara's golden eyes narrowed. "I do not interrogate, I hunt, I kill." "Charming," James muttered. "So why am I still breathing?" Navara didn't answer. Instead, she approached a sleek Krell shuttle docked at an emergency airlock. With a series of quick commands on her wrist device, the shuttle's hatch slid open. "Enter," she ordered. "We have little time." James hesitated at the threshold. "Where are you taking me?" "Away," Navara replied simply. "The station will be destroyed. My squadron will assume I perished in the explosion." "And your superiors?" Navara's expression hardened. "Will not question the disappearance of a first Huntress." James took a deep breath and stepped into the shuttle. The interior was designed for Krell physiology, taller, narrower spaces with control surfaces optimized for their elongated fingers. Navara moved to the pilot's position, her movements fluid and precise. As the shuttle disengaged from the dying station, James watched through the viewport as fires consumed the structure. Somewhere inside were civilians he'd sworn to protect, colleagues he'd trained with, friends he might never see again. And here he was, fleeing with the enemy. "Navara," he said quietly, "why are you doing this?" The Huntress's hands paused over the controls. "I do not know," she admitted, her voice carrying a note of genuine confusion. "I have never failed to complete a hunt, never questioned my duty, until I heard your voice, until I saw your face." The station exploded behind them in a spectacular ball of fire and debris. The shockwave caught the shuttle, sending it spinning out of control. Navara fought with the controls, her face set in grim determination. James grabbed onto a support beam as the shuttle tumbled through space. "Can you stabilize it?" he shouted over the alarms blaring throughout the craft. "Navigation is damaged," Navara replied, her voice unnaturally calm as she worked. "We are caught in the planet's gravity well. Prepare for emergency landing." James barely had time to secure himself before the shuttle hit the atmosphere. The craft shook violently, heat shields straining against the friction. Through the viewport, James could see the planet's surface approaching, a patchwork of forests and rocky terrain. "This will not be gentle," Navara warned as she fought to guide their descent. "Story of my life," James muttered, bracing for impact. The shuttle slammed into the ground, skidding through trees and rock for what felt like an eternity before finally coming to rest in a small clearing. For a moment, everything was silent except for the hiss of cooling metal and the distant sound of wildlife disturbed by their violent arrival. James unstrapped himself, checking his body for injuries. Aside from bruises and a possible cracked rib, he appeared intact. Navara was slumped over the controls, a trickle of dark blue blood running from a cut on her forehead. He hesitated, then moved to her side. Enemy or not, she had saved his life. "Navara," he said, gently shaking her shoulder, "are you okay?" Her eyes snapped open, instantly alert. She grabbed his wrist with lightning speed, then relaxed slightly when she recognized him. "I am functional," she said, wiping the blood from her face. "The shuttle is not. Communications and propulsion are both damaged beyond repair." James looked out at the alien landscape. "Where are we?" "Terox IV," Navara replied, checking her weapon systems. "A contested border world, neither fully human nor Krell." "So we're both behind enemy lines, depending on who finds us first," James observed. Navara nodded grimly. "We must move. This crash will draw attention." As they gathered what supplies they could salvage from the shuttle, James couldn't shake the feeling that this bizarre situation, stranded on a remote planet with a Krell Huntress who should have killed him but couldn't, was just the beginning of something much larger than either of them understood. "Navara," he said as they prepared to leave the crash site, "what happens when you remember why you know me?" The Huntress paused, her amber eyes meeting his. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I intend to find out." With that ominous promise hanging between them, they ventured into the alien forest, two enemies bound by a mystery neither of them understood. Echoes of memory. The twin moons of Terox IV cast long shadows through the dense forest as Navarra and James made their way across the rugged terrain. 3 days had passed since their crash landing, and tension hung between them like an invisible thread, neither fully trusting, yet bound by circumstances and the enigmatic connection they couldn't explain. James winced as he stepped over a fallen log, his hand instinctively moving to his side where bruised ribs protested the movement. Navarra noticed but said nothing, her amber eyes constantly scanning their surroundings for threats. "We should rest soon," she finally said, her melodic voice breaking the silence that had stretched between them for hours. "There is a ridge ahead that will provide tactical advantage for the night." James nodded, conserving his breath. The Krell Huntress moved with tireless efficiency despite her own injuries, making him feel clumsy and slow by comparison. Yet she had adjusted her pace to accommodate his human limitations, a courtesy he hadn't expected from the galaxy's most feared predator. "Tell me about the Krell hegemony," James said as they began ascending the rocky slope. Conversation was partly to distract from his physical discomfort, but also to solve the puzzle of why this lethal warrior had spared him. Navarra's spine ridges flickered, a gesture James had begun to recognize as contemplation. "We are order amidst chaos," she said. "Unity of purpose, strength through discipline." "Sounds like a recruitment slogan," James replied with a dry chuckle. "I meant you, your people, beyond the propaganda." They reached the top of the ridge and Navarra paused, surveying the valley below before answering. "We are born to serve the collective," she said eventually. "From our first breath, our path is determined by our abilities. I showed aptitude for hunting, tracking, combat. I was taken for specialized training at what humans would call age 6. "You were just a child," James said, unable to hide his shock. "I was honored," Navarra corrected, though something in her tone suggested uncertainty. "The role of Huntress is sacred among my people. We enforce the will of the hegemony, we execute its judgment." As the light faded, they established a small camp beneath an outcropping of rock. James activated a heating element from their salvaged supplies, while Navarra set perimeter alerts with practiced efficiency. "Your turn," she said, settling across from him, the soft glow from the heater illuminating her scaled features. "Tell me of Earth, of humanity." James considered the request. "We're messy," he admitted with a slight smile. "Contradictory, we preach peace while preparing for war. We value individuality but crave belonging. We're capable of both tremendous compassion and shocking cruelty." "Inefficient," Navarra observed. "Maybe," James conceded. "But there's beauty in our chaos, freedom to choose your own path, to make mistakes and learn from them, to fall in love." Navarra tilted her head, the concept seemingly foreign to her. "Love is a weakness in combat." "Is that what they taught you?" James asked quietly. Before she could answer, one of the perimeter sensors chimed softly. Navarra was on her feet in an instant, energy blade drawn. "Stay here," she commanded, her voice a harsh whisper. "Do not move until I return." James reached for his salvaged pulse pistol, but nodded. He'd seen enough of her combat skills to know she was more effective alone. Minutes stretched into an hour before Navarra returned, moving silently through the darkness. Her expression was grim. "Krell Scout Party," she reported. "3 warriors. They did not detect us, but they are searching the area systematically. They must have tracked the shuttle's descent path." "Did you engage them?" James asked, noticing fresh blue blood on her armor. "No," she replied, then hesitated. "I observed only. The blood is not recent." James recognized the lie but didn't challenge it. Whatever she had done, she had chosen to protect him, an act of treason against her own people. "We cannot stay," Navarra continued, already gathering their minimal supplies. "They will have reported our approximate location. More will come by dawn." They moved through the night, descending the far side of the ridge and following a shallow stream to mask their trail. James struggled to keep pace, exhaustion and injury slowing him considerably. Near dawn, they discovered an abandoned mining outpost carved into the side of a cliff, a relic from the early days of human colonization before the Krell claimed this region. This will provide shelter and defensive position, Navarra decided after a thorough inspection. We can rest here. Inside, the outpost was a single large chamber with rusted equipment and collapsed support beams. James cleared a space while Navarra secured the entrance. You should sleep, she told him when she returned. I will maintain watch. You need rest too, James countered, noting the subtle signs of fatigue in her posture. Krell physiology requires less recovery time than humans, she stated matter-of-factly, but then added with surprising candor. Though I admit these circumstances are taxing. James sat against the wall, observing her as she performed maintenance on her armor. Why did you kill those scouts? He asked directly. Navarra's hands stilled. For a moment he thought she would continue to deny it, but then she met his gaze. They would have reported my presence, she said. With a human, it would raise questions I cannot answer. Because you don't have the answers yourself, James suggested. Yes, she admitted, her voice uncharacteristically soft. I have been experiencing fragments, images that make no sense, a facility, a human speaking with my voice, your voice. James leaned forward. I've been having dreams too, since the crash. A laboratory, Krell and humans working together, it doesn't make any sense. The border wars began 5 years ago, Navarra said slowly. Before that, there were attempts at diplomacy, failed attempts. Not all of them, maybe, James suggested. What if there was a joint project, something classified, something both our governments wanted hidden? Navarra's spine ridges flared with interest. Memory suppression is within Krell capability. And Earth's governments aren't exactly strangers to covering up inconvenient truths, James added grimly. A distant explosion interrupted their speculation, powerful enough to shake dust from the outpost ceiling. They moved to the entrance together, peering out at the early morning sky where a column of smoke rose from the direction of their crash site. They're destroying the evidence, Navarra said, her voice tight. Question is which side, James muttered. Throughout the day, they observed increased activity in the skies above, both Krell and human vessels conducting search patterns. By nightfall, the distant sound of ground transports could be heard echoing through the valley. We're being hunted by both sides, James realized. But why? What do they think we know? There is a Krell outpost 2 days' journey from here, Navarra said after consideration. It houses a data archive. If there are records of joint human-Krell operations, they would be there. James raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting we walk into a Krell military installation. I am a first Huntress, Navarra reminded him with a hint of pride. My clearance would grant access. The difficulty would be concealing your presence. Or, James countered, we could try the human research facility on the other side of the mountain range. I might have better luck getting us both inside. Navarra's expression darkened. You would trust your people more than mine. I trust neither, James admitted, but I know human security protocols better than Krell ones. Their debate was cut short by the unmistakable sound of a dropship hovering directly overhead. Moments later, the entrance to the outpost exploded inward, sending debris flying across the chamber. Navarra reacted instantly, shoving James behind a collapsed mining cart as she drew her energy blades. Through the smoke and dust, the silhouettes of armored figures appeared, human commandos with weapons trained on both of them. Sergeant Harrison called a familiar voice. Stand down, we're here to extract you. Commander Orion Jenkins stepped through the ruined entrance, his carbon fiber combat armor gleaming in the emergency lights his squad had deployed. His gaze moved from James to Navarra, his expression hardening. And I see you've captured a high-value target, he continued, raising his weapon toward the Krell Huntress. Well done, Sergeant, we'll take it from here. James stepped forward, placing himself between Jenkins and Navarra. Commander, there's something you need to know. Step aside, Harrison, Jenkins ordered, his voice cold. That's a Krell Huntress, responsible for the deaths of hundreds of our people. She saved my life, James insisted, and there's more going on here than you understand. Jenkins's laugh was humorless. Oh, I understand plenty. The Krell bitch has gotten into your head, classic Stockholm syndrome. Navarra tensed behind James, her energy blades humming with deadly potential. With a subtle gesture, he signaled her to wait. Commander, listen to me, James tried again. There's evidence of a joint operation between humans and Krell before the war, something both governments want buried. We're both experiencing memory fragments. Memory fragments? Jenkins interrupted, his demeanor suddenly changing. He exchanged a meaningful glance with his second-in-command. Project Harmony? He asked in a quieter voice. The name triggered something in James's mind. A flash of scientists in white coats, Krell elders in ceremonial robes, hands being clasped across species lines. Yes, he said, though he hadn't known the name until Jenkins spoke it. What is Project Harmony? Jenkins lowered his weapon slightly. That's classified, Sergeant, above even my clearance. But I do know this. If you're remembering fragments of it, then someone wants you both eliminated. Then why are you here? Navarra spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through the tension. Routine search and rescue, Jenkins answered, studying her with newfound interest. Tracking the emergency beacon from Harrison's armor, we had no idea what we'd find. And now, James asked. Jenkins seemed to come to a decision. Now we have a choice. Follow orders and bring you both in, likely to people who want this secret kept, or help you figure out what the hell is going on. Why would you help us? Navarra demanded, suspicious. Because I lost my brother in the first wave of this war, Jenkins said grimly. And if there was a chance for peace that someone deliberately sabotaged, I want to know who's responsible. James and Navarra exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them despite their short acquaintance. The Krell Archive, James decided. It's our best shot at answers. Jenkins nodded. My team can get you close, but not inside. You'll be on your own once you reach the perimeter. As the commandos prepared for departure, James pulled Navarra aside. Are you sure about this? We'd be walking into the heart of Krell territory. Navarra's amber eyes studied him intently. You trusted me when I spared your life. Now I must trust you with mine. She hesitated, then added, There is something between us, James Harrison, a connection I cannot explain, but I intend to discover its origin. The intimacy of hearing his name on her lips caught James off guard. Despite everything, their different species, the war that made them enemies, the mystery that surrounded them, he felt drawn to her in ways that defied explanation. Then we do this together, he said, offering his hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment's hesitation, Navarra placed her clawed hand in his, the contrast between her scaled blue skin and his tanned human flesh stark yet somehow right. Together, she agreed, and in that moment both felt the echo of a memory, or perhaps a promise, still beyond their grasp.